Hi there everyone, welcome back to STEM Lockdown Digital School. This is grade 12 Information Technology and I am your presenter, Lelani Lagransi. As promised, we're going to look at the final of 2018, question 3. That is your OOP question for your final of the end of grade 12. So the first thing we need to do for this question is have a look at what is given. So under 3.1, they will always give you a little table, and these are the names of our attributes with a description of what it holds. Now, name we know is string, and then here opened, we would expect would be an integer. It's given in the format with a 3y, so that means in the year 2020, it will hold 2020. But if you have a look at what's given in the class, you will see it's actually stored as a string. And that's important to take note of. And the number of employees, we would expect it to be an integer, but it's always good to just go and have a look and a double check on what the data types is of your attributes. The first question here is 3.1.1, and we will do one question at a time and then only move on to the second one. So here we're writing the constructor, and the word receive indicates what parameter or parameters we are receiving. And you don't want to declare more or less than the paper describes. So here you can number them if you have your pen with you. So the name of the restaurant, number 1, the year of the restaurant, number 2, and then finally the third one would be the number of employees. In this example, we're receiving all the attributes as parameters, and we're going to assign these values to the respective attributes. But we don't have to receive all the values for all attributes. We could only receive some of them or even none and initialize them to some other values as the paper describes. So press pause, try it yourself, and let's have a look. So here are my 3 attributes that would be part of the given code. As you can see, the year opened is string, and we can just confirm there that the number of employees is in fact integer. So my constructor is receiving, as per the question paper, all 3 of these values as parameters. And therefore I have the year and the name. Both of these are string. And then I have the number of employees as an integer. So I want to match my parameters with the attribute data types. Then once you're done with your constructor create signature, you push Ctrl-Shift-C. And here we go. You now complete your constructor create. Remember your fields, F stands for first, they will always be on the left of the assignment statement, and your parameters will be on the right because the right gives values to the left. So there I'm giving all 3 my fields the values and using my parameters received. Very important to note is that your constructor will always run first. So from now on, you may assume that these 3 attributes, also called fields, do have values, since this would run first and my parameters will give them values. Getting the constructor wrong will cause this 40-mark program of yours not to produce any output or just a whole bunch of errors. So make sure you know exactly how to complete your constructor create. My next question here is asking me to create a method. So now I have to decide, is it a function or is it a procedure? And the value or the word return indicates to me that it is a function. And it's returning the number of employees. So it's going to be a function called getNumEmployees. And the data type of that must match my attribute for the number of employees. Remember, that was an integer. So this is very easy, just 2 marks. But 2 easy marks to score. Press pause and try it yourself. Here is my function getNumberOfEmployees, returning an integer data type because it's going to return F number of employees, one of my fields. And the code for these, what are called accessor methods, are very simple. It will just be result is assigned to and then the name of the field or the attribute on the right. So result, remember every function needs a result, and that will match the data type of this function. And this will be the value that it returns for me in my main form. Remember, our attributes that are declared under private are called encapsulated. That means that only my object class, this unit here, can gain access to them. Therefore, we need accessor methods to give our main form access to these fields and attributes. This next question, question 3.1.3, asks us to create a method called increase num employees, but nowhere do I see the word return or result. So if I don't see the word return or result, it means it's a procedure. I do, however, see the word receive, and therefore it is receiving a parameter. And you can see it's receiving an integer value, and we have to add this value to the current number of employees. Press pause, try it yourself, and I'll show you the memo. Here is the signature of increase num employees. It's a procedure, and it has one parameter, and the parameter has an integer data type. Remember, your procedure doesn't have a return result data type, so there's nothing after that bracket, just a semicolon. Then you will push Ctrl-Shift-C, and what we're doing here is we're taking the parameter and we're adding it to the existing number of employees and saving that as the new number of employees of my class. The last method that we have to create for our class is the method called compile code. And here I see it says returns a value. So therefore I know it is a function. It's always also receiving a value. It's receiving the name of the owner. Previously your constructor received the name of the restaurant, but this one is receiving the name of the owner as a parameter. And when it's a function, we need to determine the result data type. And this is the identification code that I'm returning, so therefore it would be a string. Now these characters here represents different things, and so that's what's explained in here. The percentage is the first letter of the name of the restaurant. That's one of your attributes. Then the $sign represents the last two characters of the full name of the owner. That is the parameter you received, so the last two characters. And then the 4 Ys represents the year the restaurant opened. That's also one of your attributes. And then they give you an example of when the following was entered. This is what your code should return. So here's my function called compile code, receiving the name of the owner as a string and returning a string as well. So let's have a look at compile code. Remember, it's a function, so it needs a result data type. It said the first character of the restaurant. So you can see there I'm using fname, the restaurant name that was received in your constructor, and I'm just using the first character. Then I need to copy from this parameter received, that's the owner's name, the last two characters. So you might think that I made a mistake here deducting one from the length, but let's just have a look at an example. If you look at John Space Smith, there are 10 characters. So if I take the length minus 2, I will start copying at 8. And if I copy for 2 characters, it's going to copy out the I and the T. So it's not the length minus 2, it's the length minus 1. So I want to start at 9, and I want to copy out for 2 characters. So I'm copying out T and H. Remember, the copy function actually says copy from here and for so many characters. This is not up to where it must copy. It's how many characters it must copy, starting at the second argument. And then we just have to add to the end the year opened. And remember, the year opened was a string, so we don't need any conversion there. It's a good time to save and run your program before you move on to the main form. So then we're going to go to question 3.2.1, and here we are asked to instantiate the object. That really just means to call your constructor create with the correct arguments. Here are the instructions on what you need to complete, and you can see that this is worth 8 marks. That's quite a bit for only a few lines of code. The first thing you want to do is to store the input from the user for the name and the year, and the number of employees were entered in a spin edit. The spin edit has a .value property, and the value is already an integer data type, so there's no conversion needed or typecasting using your string to int. Now, here's a little tip, if you haven't seen this before, on how to remember this very important line of code. Scroll up and then copy out the declaration of your object. Scroll down and paste it always after your input, and then change that colon to an assignment statement by adding the equals. Then type .create, and if everything is correct above this line of code, it's going to give you hints as to which parameters or arguments you need to send it to the parameters. Now, when we're marking this in matric finals, you actually get marks for what I call nod. The arguments must match the parameters. The parameters are where we declared and created our constructor in nod: number, order, and data type. So my constructor create in my class has 3 parameters, so therefore I have to send it 3 arguments. That's the number. Order, the name comes first, the year second, and then the number of employee last. And the D is for data type. It needs 2 strings, and then it needs an integer number. And that's why this little bit of code counts so many marks. Part of our given code was a 2-string, and all you were required to do in this line here was to display the 2-string in your rich edit. Remember, a 2-string is a function and has to form part of another statement. In this case, we're displaying it in a rich edit. Remember, from now on, after your constructor create, you won't use T-restaurant anymore. You'll only use your object that you declared or was declared for you, dot, and then the method. And functions have to be part of other statements, and our procedures will stand on their own. And 2 strings is usually called in some form of output object, like for example a rich edit, a label, a panel, a show message, or even we could write the 2-string to a text file. So this is question 3.2.2, and we need the full name of the owner that is entered in the edit box. And then we are calling that compile code method that we created. That was a function to display it in EDT ID code. So here is the input from the user, and then I have my object.text, my edit box.text is assigned to the object name dot compile code, and remember it needed an argument. So the argument, well, the parameter was declared as string, so therefore I have to send the string, and that was the owner's name. Now, as a tip, what I suggest you do is go into your object inspector and type in the first example of output. You will always have some input in there as well. Type that in the edit box, so it actually speeds up the running of your program or the testing thereof. Just be careful when you are testing this button here. What you guys often do is, you know that the 3.2.1 is working, so instead of clicking on that first, you immediately click on this code here, on that button here, and then you get this error says access violation. And you're getting that because the object does not yet exist in the RAM. You always have to first click on instantiate the object, and then only are you able to click on that second button, because our constructor needs to run first before any other method can run using that object. And here's the last part of this question. And here you really had to read carefully. There was a constant declared for you IMAX employees, and there were marks allocated for using that constant. And then you have to get the number of employees in the edit box, and then you have to determine if there's space for these new employees using IMAX employees, as well as the methods from your class. If there was space, you would then add these employees to the current number of employees, and you will update your edit box EDT update by showing it the current number of employees after the new ones were added. If there were no space for these employees, you had to just display a message in your edit to say that the maximum has been exceeded. So here is two sets of examples of output, and when you get more than one set of output, it's important to test both of them. Here's my constant declared for me, and I am going to use it here in my if statement. First, I'm going to get the input from the user. Now what I want to do is I want to see the number of employees that I currently have. Should I add this new set of numbers? Would it exceed means more than, not greater than and equal to, just greater than this constant I max employees. And if it would exceed this value, I'm then going to display exceeds maximum. Else I'm going to update my current number of employees using that method we created. Remember, it was a procedure, so when I'm calling it, it's just the object name dot name of the procedure and the round brackets with the argument in there. It's not assigned to anything and it's not part of another statement because it's a procedure. And then in the output of the edit box, I have to display the updated number of employees. And I have to do that by using get employees because the number of employees have been changed and I want to use the methods from our class. Get number of employees returns an integer, so therefore I'll have to put into string around the calling of this function. So this was good practice because this paper really asked us the class in a little different way. So we're going to go and have a look at some more final papers so that we can see all the different methods that they could ask us this question. Remember to go to the education.gov.za website, click on curriculum and then National Senior Certificate to download your past papers. And under National Curriculum Statement in 2018, you'll find the exam guidelines applicable to matric this year. You can also find some resources on this website if you go to tinyurl.com/Dandelion Delphi. Before you watch our next video, make sure that you try question 4 of the final of 2018. It does not make use of two-dimensional arrays. There are only one-dimensional arrays in there. It is a little bit of a challenge, but I think it's less of a challenge than the final of 2019 that we've done before. Thank you very much for watching STEM Lockdown Digital School. And please follow Africa Teen Gigs on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And also find some of the videos under YouTube, searching for the Africa Teen Gigs channel. Hope to see you soon.